city is fundamental basis of the toolkit that gives rise to the kinds of civilizations that human beings have thus far been able to create. The possibility that I am proposing is that we are now within a threshold, we are now near to a point where we can in fact innovate a new way of living together that is different, it's a different basis than the city. The core theory here comes from work that was done largely around the Santa Fe Institute, largely with people like Geoffrey West and Louis Betancourt and many others. And you can read about it actually in the book called Scale that Geoffrey West produced in the past couple of years. What they were looking at was particular characteristics that are called scaling laws. If I have a mouse that weighs 100 grams and it has, let's say, metabolic rate X, and I double its mass to 200 grams, I don't in fact double its metabolism. I increase it by only 85%. The sublinear scaling is the very heart of living systems. So whether you're looking at cells or organisms, whether you're looking at mammals or reptiles, whether you're looking at, by the way, trees or forests, right, entire ecosystems that are multi-species, you still see this exact same kind of sublinear scaling dynamic. Elephants are kind of as big as they're going to get. Blue whales are as big as they're going to get in the context of that particular niche. Systems have limits to growth built in. Human systems also fell under the same rules. So if I take a corporation and I add more people, I don't, for example, increase revenue per person linearly. Corporations have a natural asymptote. At a certain point, you're just not getting any more productivity. We also see in, for example, cities, that if you take a look at the population of a city and you look at, for example, the length of roads in the city, the same basic characteristic. If I double the population of a city, the amount of the length of roads does not double, it increases by 85%. In this context, a city is like a forest. With regard to other characteristics, cities, and only in cities, did they find not a sublinear scaling metric, but a superlinear scaling metric. Everybody makes, let's just say on average, $10,000 a month. If I double the population of the city, now everybody makes $11,500. Now this is a very important thing because it means that if I'm choosing between city A and city B, and city A is a 500,000 person city and city B is a 1 million person city, I will make more money going to city B. Now, of course, what that means is that more likely I will choose the biggest city, which means the biggest city is going to tend to get bigger. Cities are to people like stars are to atoms. It's a gravitational attractor to pack as many people as possible into the city, because if you increase the population, then you increase things like wealth and, by the way, also innovation. And it's facing the repulsor of, for example, constraints around there's only so many people you can pack into a particular piece of space. There's only so much food you can produce in the city. If you're producing the food out of the city, you've got transportation and also moving waste out of the city as constraints. And so what we see is a kind of a seeking on the part of cities to maximally use the technology that is available to them to overcome the limitations or the constraints of physical bodies, to pack as many human beings as possible into cities, to thereby get this superlinear growth in wealth and innovation and other characteristics. And then effectively running into the limits of that. The entire population of a region is composed of the city and its support infrastructure, which means that it's becoming fragile. Logistics gets as intense as it can. Food distribution gets as intense as it can. Water distribution gets as intense as it can. Crime and disease also tend to increase super linearly, so you have to build techniques to try to reduce that vis-a-vis innovation. Like innovation and wealth are fighting against crime and disease. And so minor perturbation, and boom, you get a collapse. And then that collapse creates a collapse of the entire civilization. I would propose that the collapse of the Roman Empire was, in some very distinct sense, the actual collapse of the city of Rome, and everything else was support infrastructure. The key idea here is city, attraction, repulsion, dynamic. Until now. If you think about it, the core attractor is actually not the city. The real driver of this superlinear scaling metric is minds in relationship. distinct intelligences interacting through some mechanism. Things like this medium, and more importantly, things like video conferences, and I strongly suspect the next wave of virtual reality, have enough possibility of relationship in the virtual that we can in fact decouple the attractor and the repulsor. If we can render unto the virtual what is best done in the virtual, and render into the physical what is best done in the physical, and then bring those back into proper relationship, we can change the whole game. Creative, generative collaboration in the virtual. And now here we can in fact have a single city. One place where all minds, at least in principle, can be in right relationship with each other. They can communicate, they can interrelate. No longer constrained in the same way by physicality. Now, by the way, this implies that we should get significant increases in wealth and innovation. On the other side, now the bodies can be returned to humanness, to a more humane way of living. Living among people who you know well, strong link relationships, family, community, living in nature, making sure that the place that you're living is built at human scale, very walkable, very quiet, low toxicity, all of the human scale living that we've had to surrender.